Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's On the Sofa. We have the great privilege of having Christian Roberts on with us tonight, so we'll bring him and Vic on shortly. Just a couple of things. Grimsby tickets for the match away at the end of September. Tickets go on sale to season ticket holders tomorrow at 12 noon and on Thursday for general sale. Kick-off tomorrow night in the Papa John's is a 7 o'clock kick-off, just to let everybody know, remind people, so you don't miss the first half, against Crystal Palace. That's tomorrow. We're still after memberships, so it's still open. And as we have said, once we get to 1,000, we will be picking a name to win last year's signed shirt, so well worth the £5 to join, especially if you travel away, because you will certainly get your money back in a couple of trips for that. We are looking at doing some live events as well, so of course OSC have priority, members have priority for those and things like that, so well worth £5 per season. So join online. If you were watching last week, we discussed the Gillingham ticket issue when they were asking us to create accounts and put photographs and all sorts on. I did say that I would be having communication with them, which I have. They've been very good. They are trying to work out why, and it should be that you can go in as a guest and you don't have to put the photograph. They are looking to their platform owners to look at to see why the glitch is. The privacy, GDPR issues. If you go on the website, they do have some policies. It's right down the bottom with all their privacy notices and things. It really doesn't answer the question, so I'm still going to be continuing with that. I'm due a phone call tomorrow from Ben in the ticket office, so I will let you know next week where we are with that, or we'll put some out on social media. Okay, so I think that's all the news that we've got to give. So let's bring Vic on. And I'm sure he'll tell me if I've forgotten anything. Have I forgotten anything, Vic?
You haven't forgotten anything, because I was going to do this anyway. But the SAS Travel Office is open tomorrow evening. And, of course, it is a 7 o'clock kickoff. So they'll be open behind the town end at 5:15. And there are a limited number of Gillingham seats still available. They leave at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning to go to the Priestfield, one of our favourite venues. Obviously, 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, but there are a limited number of Gillingham seats on the buses still available. So if you want to do that, go along to their office tomorrow night before the game, and their office opens around about 5:15.
Brilliant. Right, let's bring Christian on. Hiya, Christian.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a privilege, and thank you for agreeing to give your time up for us. It's much appreciated. And as I said, I've not seen you for a long time, and not in a red shirt tonight. Okay, so I'm going to leave you. If there's any questions, please leave them in the comments and we'll pass them through to Vic. Mark's on comments tonight, so he will pass them through, and I will be back a bit later.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Christian, thank you very much indeed for your time tonight. And I've got to say, right from the off, we're going to talk about this a bit, because this is one of the best books I've read in a long time. Extraordinary piece of work. And I know you did it with somebody called James Layton, who deserves a great deal of credit for helping you along with it. It tells of the life of a professional footballer. It tells of the ups, the downs. I got to tell you, I just recently watched the goal against Hartlepool for you in the playoff semi-final, which you described as one of the great moments. And you watched it over and over again. And then, of course, there are the downs, aren't there, which we'll get through, of course. Yeah. You'll notice behind me some of the shirts that you will have worn for the town in your 4 years there.
Absolutely.
Where should we start? I guess the beginning. Llanrumney, just outside of Cardiff, is that right?
Well, Llanrumney's in Cardiff. It's a council estate east of Cardiff. Very challenged area, but produces some talent. Myself, Simon Howarth, who went on to have a decent career, Coventry, Wigan, Paul Bowden, You know,
Yeah.
Paul Bowden, who missed the penalty for Wales. A friend of mine, Leon Jean, who was a fantastic footballer, but, you know, really had his challenges outside of football, to be honest with you. Craig Bellamy, coming from the area, you know, just across there's Lamrumney and Rumney, which is like this sort of rivalry of east of Cardiff and stuff. But so yeah, you know, it was difficult, to be honest. I come from a family of 7, including my parents did 9, so it was difficult. But I found football at an early age, and I was sort of that kept me on the sort of straight and narrow, to be honest with you. As soon as I started playing football was all I wanted to do, and I made every sort of effort to try and achieve that.
One person who was extraordinarily important in your life, of course, was your father.
Yes.
And we'll get to his sad passing later on, at a time when also football came to an end for you. But
yeah,
he was somebody, along with your mother, and she had a problem with alcohol, which obviously may have led to something for you. But your dad was an extraordinarily influential character in your life, wasn't he?
Yeah, my father was everything to me, to be honest. You know, from an early age, you know, he just had this unique way of transforming things, so I understood them. You know, he was one who encouraged hard work. He was one who encouraged sort of commitment, and he sacrificed his life, to be honest. You know, he would quite often at an early age, he'd take me all over the country to different tournaments, and we'd spend a lot of time on the road, you know, between the ages of, I think it was 10 when I first got spotted by Cardiff, Luton and Norwich, till the age of 14 when I committed to Cardiff City. Every four nights a week, every weekend, he'd be out the house, you know, and he sacrificed a lot for me, you know, and it was just a pleasure to spend time with him. And, you know, he was in probably every sort of iconic moment for me. You know, he was first there when I signed for Cardiff City. He was there when I signed my first pro contract, you know, and it's sort of surreal that both came to an end within a week as well. You know, I lost him and I lost football within a week. So we done everything together in football. We just got on like father and son, and, you know, he was a driving force behind me sort of achieving my goal, to be honest.
Yeah, I mentioned your mum. She'd obviously got problems with alcohol. And when did you become first aware of that?
To be honest, it was sort of, I knew there was something, but each morning I'd have to go around the shop, and I never looked in this bag that I used to have to go around the shop, and, you know, I'd come home, and then all of a sudden my mum would sort of get up and start getting ready and stuff. And I think I was about 13. And I'd been doing this for some time, to be honest, you know, good 2.5 years, and every morning. And I opened the bag, and it was like 2 bottles of pop, a pack of crisps, and pack of Penguins, say, and a bottle of cider. And I was just like, wow, you know, I've been doing this for 2 years. Every morning, 8 o'clock, the shop opened 8 o'clock, I was there, you know. And then as I got older and sort of more aware, I noticed it a lot more. And a glass of cider was never an arm's length away from my mother.
How did you deal with that as a youngster?
I was too far into football, to be honest. You know, I didn't even really, it didn't, even as a 16, 17-year-old kid, I had too much going on for myself to really pay attention to that. Maybe I should have paid attention to that and, you know, and been more aware of it. But I was so driven to achieve my goal of playing football that I didn't really pass comment, you know. My mum was an African woman, and she was a life and soul of any party. She would do anything for the community, you know, so much so that we would sacrifice as a family if somebody else and a neighbour needed support in anything. My mum would sit through the hospital through the night for neighbours and stuff. You know, she was a real community woman. So it was sort of, it was difficult in understanding what that actually meant, if that makes sense. And obviously it went on to sort of flourish a little bit more when as I got older and more aware, and I realised I had the same illness that my mother had, to be honest with you, you know. So, you know, I went on then to play for Cardiff City at 17. So between the ages of 10 and 17, which is 7 years, I went from kicking a football on the community pitch to playing for Cardiff City, you know. So there was a real drive to achieve playing football.
Sure. She also had a love of music. I think she liked
Yeah.
Motown, things like that. And
Yeah,
I think that kind of spurred a love of music in you too, didn't it?
absolutely. You know, my current girlfriend now, you know, I constantly say, oh, my mum would love this. I was playing Phil Collins and, you know, UB40 just today, you know, and, you know, it's, I've got my own peace with it, to be honest with you. I've got my own sort of acceptance that, you know, I've lost parents and both parents, and, you know, I'm currently reading my own book at the moment. I say my girlfriend's reading a book to me because I'm not the best at reading, but I'm, you know, I constantly, you know, my daughter who's 5 constantly asks about Damiana, who, you know, my mother, and it's still alive at the moment, I think, and it's come up a little bit more because of my daughter, that I would suppose, because she's constantly asking like about my mum and dad, and, you know, the fact that I don't have a mum and dad, and starting to sort of talk about that. I sort of feel that my parents are a little bit more in my life at the moment than they have been of past, because, you know, I didn't have any sort of reason to explore and have conversations about my mum and dad.
Sure. Football then, and you mentioned Cardiff City, but Stoke were also after you. And there's this great story in the book where you're kind of driving up a hill, I think, aren't you? And one minute you're going to go to Stoke, and then your dad says something, and then you change your mind, you go to Cardiff. And tell us about that moment that you got 2 clubs chasing you, 2, you know, professional football clubs.
Well, to be honest, I had 3 at the time. I had Southampton, Stoke, and Cardiff City. And me and my father, like I said, from 10 to 14, travelled the country, and I was driving up a hill in Cardiff, Rumney Hill it is, and we were going home on a Saturday morning after the game or something, and my father mentioned, because I was about 13, and he said, Chris, you're going to have to start thinking about where you want to go and what you want to do. And I said, well, you know, I've really had, you know, I really feel I'm going to sign for Stoke. And I looked over, and I promise you, as I can remember, I never seen my father cry at all. Never seen him cry. Tradition, if you want to call it, and we've since realised that now actually the stereotypical men don't cry is nothing, you know. But I looked over, and there was the tear going down his face, and I just, something hit me. And did I make the right decision? I haven't got the answer to that, but I said, no, I'll sign for Cardiff City. And he went, no, you go where you want, you know, I'll be all right. And, you know, I'll still get to watch it. And I was like, nah, that ain't happening. Not what my father done for me. I can't. It's like I couldn't be selfish to go off and play for a club, knowing that my father for 4 years has sacrificed everything that he had and was for me to have this opportunity, and then me just go off into the limelight and move away and stuff like that. So I said, no, I'll play for Cardiff City. And to this day, that's the reason I signed for Cardiff City. You know, I'm not going to judge whether it was the right or wrong one.
Who knows? Nobody knows.
He got to see me make my debut at Cardiff City at 17, which was phenomenal.
Yeah. Now tell us about that, because, you know, those of us who have loved to have played for our hometown club, you know, those of us of a red and white persuasion would love to have made a debut at the county ground, but weren't good enough. But you get the opportunity to do that for your hometown club. What is that moment like? To
be honest, the whole sort of scenario was quite weird. I was doing jobs because I was an apprentice at the time. And I was doing jobs on a Friday, basically getting the ground ready for match day on the Saturday. And I was in the referee's room, and as I'm hoovering away, cleaning the referee's room just to make sure it's ready for the next day, like the 2 managers at the time, Russell Osman and Kenny Ibbett, and Gavin Tate, who was my youth manager, just walked in. And as an apprentice, because you could sometimes get yourself in a little bit of trouble, I thought, what have I done now? And everything was going through my head, like, what have I done? Where was I? No, last Saturday I behaved. I did this. Yeah, I haven't missed that. And Russell Osman just literally come out with the question, how many tickets do you want for tomorrow? And I was like, what? Like, what are you on about? Like, he said, how many tickets do you want for tomorrow? And first number that came into my head was 10. I said, 10. He said, okay. And he walked out. And I was like, what's going on? And then Kenny Ibbett just said, look, he said, Chris, he said, you're on the bench for Cardiff tomorrow. You're on the bench for the first team. I was like, dropped. And the only thing I could, honestly, from that moment that he told me, I just wanted to get home and tell my dad. I just literally, you know, I was a 17-year-old kid, you know, been a year in apprenticeship, and I had a good, decent first year, but we had a couple of injuries start of the season, and I just wanted to get home. And I remember getting home and literally sitting on the stairs waiting for my dad to come in from work to tell him that I'd been selected or I'd been given the opportunity to go on a bench. And he walked in, and I didn't say anything, but I just said, Dad, I'm on the bench for the first team tomorrow. And we had a big hug, and he said, I always knew you'd make it. And he, you know, the father moment, you know, it was always going to happen. And I didn't think it would happen at 17. And then the next day, I remember getting a bus to Ninian Park, and, you know, 2 buses actually. And I got to the ground, and I had an awful suit on. You know, I got hammered for the suit I was wearing. And then the motions of you're going out for warm up, and then I come back in, and then we went out, and I'm sat on the bench. And after 26 minutes or 25 minutes, Chris Greenacre took a whack to the eye, or something poked him in the eye, or something happened. And they just called me back. And as I even running back, I didn't even think that I was going on. I just thought, like, I wasn't warming up properly, and he just said, right, you're going on. And I just remember running across Ninian Park, which, you know, was always a dream of mine. And I went on to have man of the match, and, you know, it was all singing and dancing.
Yeah, you had a couple of rave reviews in newspapers as well, I think, didn't you?
Yeah.
Which, you know, for a young kid who's just come on and made his debut for a hometown club, that must have been extra special. Yeah,
it was. And I got the papers in early Sunday morning just to, you know, and it didn't last long enough, though, you know, because on the Monday I went into training and I bust my knee and I was out for 3 months. So, you know, I went again, a bit like my life, to be honest, at the time. It was like up at the top of the trees and down on the ground as quick as things sort of happened. You know what I mean? So it was sort of, again, I just remember, I think it was the Friday I had the operation, or the Friday I was told I needed the operation. I was just thinking to myself, like, how could this happen? It's like, if you tell somebody this, people wouldn't think it's true. You know, it was just unbelievable that I'd gone on. I had a great debut, you know, looking forward to maybe having a little bit of a run in the team. And then the Monday I injured and I'm out for 3 months, you know, so it was difficult. It was difficult to digest, and you've got to start again. And that mental toughness of, no, you know, I'll get back in there. And I got back in the first team, I think, in the March of that year. So, you know, I achieved it again, if that makes sense. And it was a difficult time in Cardiff. You know, it was a really difficult time. We had no money. You know, we're bottom of the football league, and, you know, it was a real grind to make some sort of career out of playing for Cardiff City at that time.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments coming in already, and Brad says, my favourite winger. Andy says, if it meant so much to your dad, then you probably made the right decision, Christian. No better reason. So
well said.
Yeah. Now, somebody who's a legend at Swindon, of course, Frank Burrows, and Billy Eyre were at Cardiff City. And I think somehow, I mean, you mentioned your knee, and that's been a problem all the way through your career. And we'll get to obviously why that ended it a little later. Yeah. But what went wrong? What went wrong, do you think? And why were you kind of, I was going to say sidelined, if that's the word, but you know, sort of pushed out of the picture, do you think?
Truthfully, and I'll only answer it truthfully, money. And we weren't at that stage at the time, as a club, we weren't in developing players. If we had one person, Simon Howard, come in, I think he played 10, 12 games, sold him on. You know, myself, you know, I really believe that due to a lack of money, investment, opportunity, right managers at the time, to be honest with you, I know, respect for Frank Burrows. I went on to sort of meet him in football along the line when he was at West Brom and things like that. So remarkable career in football he had, and I wouldn't disrespect him at all. But at the time, it was like, we have a limited option and opportunity for anybody. You know, everyone we got in was on loan, or, you know, the minute the club could make a couple of quid. And to be honest, Ernie, Robert Earnshaw, he made his debut. He scored, I think, a remarkable overhead on his debut, and they went with him. And pretty much, you know, there was no nurturing players at that time, and that was it. We had a squad of 16, 17, 18. Now and then I would play or get an opportunity, but I just feel it was just the wrong for me, I would say the wrong management at the time when you're trying to bring players through the club as well. However, they were the decisions that were made at the time, and we live by them.
John Cornforth, you've been to Exeter to play in the reserves, I think. John Cornforth, who was the assistant manager at St James Park, obviously was impressed with you, and you get the opportunity to go to Exeter, and that did really resurrect your career, didn't it? It gives you that kind of kickstart again, if you like.
Absolutely, because it was a bit of a challenge going down there, to be honest, because I went down there and me and Noel Blake fell out, and before I actually signed, and then
who was manager at the time, Noel Blake?
Yeah, and he came back in, and so I didn't have the best of starts there. But one thing that Cornforth done was he liked me as a player. I was quite a gritty player at the time. I'd had a couple of years mistreatment, if I'm totally honest with you, but the opportunity to move and to go and do something, and I believed in my ability. I said to myself, arrogantly or not, I said, I will only be here this contract. I will get back in the league. And before I signed for Exeter, Billy Ayres tried everything to get me to go into a non-league system, and Barry Town at the time, and I was just Merthyr Tydfil, and I was getting offered a lot of money to play a hell of a low level of football, and I just believed in my ability. I knew I could play football, so I went down there and I said to myself, right, Chris, you've got 2 years to make it, basically. And within 18 months, I signed for Bristol City. It was. I went down there. I think we both benefited for my time down there. But I knew, and I love all the clubs I played for, but I just knew that I had a bit more to offer within football. And I sort of went to Bristol City, and Bristol City were a big club at the time. I could have gone to Gillingham, I could have gone, Oldham, I think, and there was a few other clubs, but I just knew Bristol City had this really good pedigree of good football, decent ground, and and I took that opportunity.
Yeah, I know you are very well respected at Exeter City, so I'd like to pass that on. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people who support them, and everybody I've mentioned that we've got you on tonight have all said, "Oh, well, really enjoyed him when he was there, cracking player." So
I really, really enjoyed my time down there. I love my time down there. It taught me a little bit of independence, and what it took, I think. One year, I think we went 15, 16 games without a win, so it taught you about resilience, and it taught you about, really keeping going. And, it was difficult, but, Exeter are a fantastic club. I went back down and played in a charity game, and and I enjoyed my time down there. It's a really good. I'm really impressed with the way they're going at the moment. I follow all my clubs that I played with still to this day. I'm not, the first results I look for are the teams that I played for.
Yeah, they take the mickey out of me out of the current respectively positions of the two clubs, I can tell you. Some great comments coming in. This is from Jeff. So good to see Christian and hear his story. Tracy says, kudos to Christian for such honesty and openness. Did the Cardiff fans sing "He's One of Our Own"? And if they did, how did it make you feel? I don't know if that chant was around at that time. It's
no, if anything, I think I got cheered for the first couple of games I played, and then I got booed when I went back with Bristol City. So I get more. How would I say this? I get more recognition for the goals I scored against Cardiff City than the goals I scored for Cardiff City.
Yeah, and there were 1 or 2 you got against them, and I think you were in two minds whether you should celebrate or not, weren't you?
Yeah, I lived in Cardiff at the time, and I just thought it wouldn't be a good idea. There's sometimes you just got to sacrifice, and I sacrificed that celebration, but it was something that I was always remembered for. I love my time at Cardiff City, but when I played for the club, I gave the club that I played for everything. And I believe that, I didn't always turn out. I was a bit of a Marmite player. You either liked me or you didn't like me. I was either good or bad, but I tried.
How was your another comment here, which is I said to you before we started, Christian still looks fit enough to play. Does he still kick a ball? Well, we'll get onto that in a minute. How was your personal life at the time? Because the name Janine obviously plays a large part.
Yeah, personal life, to be honest with you, I think I was more aware of my drinking when I was at Exeter, to be honest with you. At Cardiff, I was still a baby, and I was getting mistreated, so I didn't really have any, how can I say, confidence. I went to Exeter, I started playing, started doing well, started enjoying myself again, and that enjoyment often led to off the pitch enjoyment as well. And and my father, I love the guy, and he'd quite often say to me, Chris, should you really have a beer? And I said, Dad, if I want to drink, I'll drink. Whether it be 11 in the morning or 10 at night, if I want to drink, I'll drink. I didn't realise that I was carrying the illness that I did, because Exeter allowed me a bit more free time, a little bit more status, if that makes sense. Being out and being liked, and wanting to be seen, and then that led on to Bristol, and it just, my relationship at the time was difficult, because I was living in Exeter and sort of coming home on the weekends. Then I'd make excuses not to come home on the weekends, and I just had my eldest son, and football, I was a bit of a cult hero, if that makes sense, and people liked the way I played, and I don't know, maybe I chose the wrong thing again. Maybe that junction, I just turned the wrong way, and my relationship, she was a very supportive partner, to be honest with you. But it was always this little illness in the background that always had a little bit more strength than what I did, to be honest with you.
You also had a couple of really sad moments, of course, as well. And I think anybody who's got family involvement with baby loss will understand what you went through. Something that's touched my life, and I know how deeply that can affect you. Did that bring on more drinking? Or not?
I genuinely, I will never make an excuse for drinking, but I went through some really tough times at an early age. I was 17, 18, I just broke into the first team, and then I got injured, and then, Janine, we bought a house together, then, Janine fell pregnant, and then one Tuesday night, I heard this screaming, and we got to the hospital, and then one doctor's telling me everything's okay, and then the next doctor walked in and said, we lost the baby. Then you have to bury, we had this coffin that was so small, and as a 17-year-old, it sort of, I was just on a conveyor belt, I believe, and then it was only when later on in life, and I'm not making excuses for it, because I was, I'm a proud alcoholic, if that's because I know my illness, but when I sit back and when I go through everything that I went through, I had some tough times. There's a lot of people that maybe wouldn't have stood up to the things I've experienced on and off the pitch. Do you know what I mean? And I'm proud that I can still tell the story. I'm proud that for anyone that's listening that have experienced the same struggles, that there are better times. I've since gone on to have 4 amazing kids. I was at my grandson's christening yesterday. It's my grandson's 2nd birthday today. So, I do believe that some things are there to actually challenge you, but also to guide you in the life that you're about to have. So, there were some difficult times, and myself and Janine went through some horrendous times, but at the same time, we got 2 beautiful kids together. I've since gone on to have 2 beautiful more kids, and maybe that was the path that was being sort of drawn out for me.
Yeah, extraordinary. I can't get over the fact you're a grandfather. That's unbelievable. Anyway, let's Bristol City then. Great move. Although those of us with Sunderland persuasion, Anyway, great move for you. Yeah. But I think that's where things gather pace, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
More money, bigger club, as you've said. Bit of a culture of drinking.
Yeah.
So bittersweet in many respects, I guess.
Absolutely. It was the first club and the first time that I felt worthy as a player, to be honest. Signed for Bristol City, great move. I think I was 22 at the time, 23, still early on in the career. I knew the traditions of Bristol City, playing against them all my career at Cardiff City and stuff. So, but it just opened the floodgates, to be honest. I'm not going to try and pamper it down. It opened the floodgates. It increased and allowed me to do a lot more things that I shouldn't have been doing. I believe I was born an alcoholic, so I'm not going to hide that. And it went rapid. It literally went rapid, and it's hard to sort of explain the difference of being at Exeter or Cardiff, where I worked every hour to get into the first team, and going to Exeter and talking to myself and saying, look, I've got 2 years now to make something. Then I get that opportunity and I get to Bristol City and I pretty much just lit it with a lighter and just ruined an opportunity that I should have had and went out to enjoy. However, I still managed to have an half decent 2 years at Bristol City, but I know you can. I don't live with regrets, but I wouldn't mind to see myself in a real channeled, the sort of attitude that I had going to Exeter and at Cardiff City. If I had that at Bristol City, I think you would have seen a totally different player.
Well, Danny Wilson, of course, was manager at Bristol City, who I got to know quite well when he was manager of Swindon Town. A lovely bloke, and
amazing guy.
I would genuinely say that. He's had a lot of stick from Swindon fans, and I just find that ridiculous because an honest, genuine man. And I think he didn't realise, did he,
No.
the extent of your, I want to say problem, but you've said it's an illness. So the extent of your illness, I don't think he quite realised how bad it was, did he?
No, no one knew about the illness. I had to make amends, part of the fellowship and the AA program. I had to make amends to Danny Wilson when he was at Swindon, not at Bristol, because, obviously I went into treatment at Swindon. But, Danny Wilson, for me at the time, was a great manager and a great guy. But the surreal thing at Bristol City was when I signed for Bristol City, and I signed over a bank holiday weekend, and they played Reading on the Saturday, and we were travelling to Brighton on the Monday. I made my debut at Brighton, and on the Sunday, the guys were having food, and Danny Wilson said, "Look, guys, if you want to have one beer, you're more than welcome to have one beer." I took that one too many. I just thought that was part of the culture of the club, and that was allowed, but not knowing that myself. How I react to alcohol to other people is completely different, and I had as much as an attitude on the pitch, I had an attitude off the pitch, and if I want to drink, I'll drink, and that's what happened. It just went out of control, to be honest.
The obvious question is, I mean, George Best was like this, wasn't he? I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful footballer. But the obvious question is, how do you manage to hide that playing professional football? Because you look at today's, they're athletes, all that kind of stuff. I mean, how do you manage to train and to play football when you are drinking to such an extent?
Do you know, I can't answer that question, but what I can say is that the biggest problem I had was I could still perform. That's the biggest problem. It's like, if you're not performing, then it's easy to sort of look at why you're not performing. But I would still have, I go to games from nightclubs and I have man of the match. And, you've read it in Paul Merson's book and Tony Adams's book. Your body just becomes immune to alcohol, and your body is that's almost like your fuel. I remember I had a sort of inkling of my illness, and I went on holiday the one year, and I came back from holiday and I said to myself, right, Chris, pre-season, no drinking, get your head into it, and let's get you seriously fit. I think it was after my first season at Bristol City, and I had a decent first year. I had scored 18 goals, and then the second year I thought, right, let's really have a go. And I was horrendous. So I thought, well, I need to go back to what I'm good at and how I get my performances. And that was, for me, I drank. And the fact that I got away with drinking and playing and performing was the reason I kept doing it. Because, if you look at modern day, any player who's not performing, there is such a line of how they are on top of that player performing, that you wouldn't get away with it today. It'd be impossible to get away with it today. But I genuinely believe I played football the last transitional period between where drinking was still part of a culture in football, even though it was really late on and probably the sort of fine line before the end, you know. Because when I was at Bristol City, you'd have a beer after the game and you get on the bus and you get a couple of carry-outs and have a game of cards, and you know, you lose a month's wages playing cards, and do you know what I mean? It was the last period, because you don't hear of that anymore. You don't hear of going in the players' bar and having a pint with a defender that just kicked hell out of you for 90 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Everything is the milkshakes and the GPSs on the shirt and the replacement fuel nowadays. And you know, I just believe that the era that I played in allowed me to get away with the mischief that I was causing myself.
Extraordinary. This from Gerard. What a great, honest, frank interview. Best of luck with your life in the future, Christian. One of my favourite Evertown players. Love his honesty. Great to see him in such a fantastic place. That's from Ian. We got more questions. I'll drop them in later. But this is such an extraordinary story. And there is one moment actually I wanted to talk to you about. And I've watched the video of this, and it's the playoff semi-final against Hartlepool. Yeah. Now this is the same year, I think, that Swindon were in the playoff semi-final against Brighton. And you'd earlier met Swindon at the county ground, a Saturday lunchtime kickoff. Yeah. And it was a cracking game. If you remember, Rory Fallon scored that ridiculous overhead kick in that match. And it's Lee Miller, I think, who missed an on-the-line opportunity for Bristol City. Yeah. That was a good season for both clubs. And ironically, you could have met Swindon in the playoff final. That would have been something, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was quite weird, because I think that was the last time that was when I transferred to Swindon after that period, wasn't it?
Yes,
right?
Yes, it was.
And I remember I played after that game, we went on to play in the playoff final against Brighton, and again my alcohol was just I just won in the game. I just it took over, and I remember we went back to pre-season because I was due to sign a new contract for Bristol, there was talk of new contract and signing new contracts. And then I thought, no, if we, go up, we're going to go up into a bigger division and I'll get a bit more money, sort of thing. So I thought, no, hold off. Anyway, cut a long story short, we lost in the playoff final. During that summer, Danny Wilson got sacked. Tinian got the job. And Tinian knew all about my behaviour, to be honest. So I knew I was sort of going out. And then we played Everton at Ashton Gate in a cup game. And I walked into the players' bar after, and Andy King was there. And he sort of said, "What's happening with you?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well," and I couldn't even remember, because we had a face-to-face when we played on that game towards the end of the season. We had a face-to-face because I think I took someone out on the sidelines, and Kingy come up and we squared off. And then 2 months later, he's signing me, and he just said to me, he said, "Come and play for me." And I said, "Who'd you manage?" Like, I couldn't even remember due to the alcohol. And he said, "Swindon." I said, "Well, here's my agent's number, and I know Bristol want to get rid of me, and let's go." And I ended up signing for Swindon. And to be honest with you, I loved playing for Cardiff City. I had a wonderful time. I loved my time at Exeter. It was where it taught me to be a little bit more of a man, and that mental toughness. Bristol City had some great times and really sort of enjoyed my time. But Swindon was special. Swindon was special. I can't help but say that, because from the moment I arrived and I turned up with my agent and on the Monday or the Tuesday to speak to him, and then I signed for him. I scored on my debut, I think.
You did? Yeah, I was there. Oldham. Yeah. Oldham, yeah.
And I just, even the people, everyone around the club, in supermarkets, they were just beautiful people. And I had an amazing 4 or 5 years there. Amazing. I really, really enjoyed myself. And that was how I signed for Swindon. And, I remember when I had my game at the end of my career, and Kingy left Swindon in quite challenging times, and he was a great manager and a great character, and I remember ringing him up, and I think he was doing some scout work for Plymouth, and I said, I've had to retire, but I've got a game, and I said, I want you to come back and manage it. Like, you've got to come back for me. And he said, I haven't been back there. And I said, well, you come back with me. He said, I'll only come back if I can smoke a cigar on the side. So I said, you do what you want. And I loved my time with him. He was just an amazing guy. I really, really loved Andy King. He was just a special guy.
With more comments coming in, Nick says, just ordered your book. Great chat by a player that used to be for City, but he's all right now. Well, I was going to get on to that, Chant, because there's a lovely moment in the book where we all know the chant, oh, Christian Roberts used to play for City, but he's all right now. You used to sing it, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You know, it was, I just said to you about my time there, and you know, to have the fans and, you know, to have people that really support you. The Swindon Town fans support Swindon Town. They go through the trenches with them, you know, and the fact that, you know, they had the respect for me to sing. Of course, you know, I loved entertaining the fans. I loved spending time with the fans. I would stop and do anything that, you know, I was asked of. I always done my interviews for the media. I really committed to the opportunities that I was given. You know, I remember I was in a supermarket when I first signed for Swindon, and I was in the supermarket, and and one of the guys said to me, when he said, if this would have been 3 months ago, this was early on when I signed, I think I just made my debut, scored or something. He said, if this would have 3 months ago, he said, when you were playing for that lot down there, he said, I would have throttled you. Do you know what I mean? But he said, but now you're with us. He said, I got your back, and that's how it was. You know, it was just a pleasure to play.
I just love the idea of a footballer doing the same chant as the fans. I think that's fantastic, and a real connection between fans and
absolutely
players.
Yeah.
What a player, Christian Roberts. Miss him. Let's have a look. There's loads of these coming in, so we'll get to them as many as possible. Now, eventually, Andy King leaves the club, as you said, and somebody comes in who is your dad. I've written down a list of people who are very influential in your life. Obviously, you mentioned your dad. We've spoken about Danny Wilson, Ify Nora.
Yes.
Now, here's somebody who, in an indirect way, has turned your life around. Tell 100%. Us that story.
So I remember I walked into the ground the one day, and I'd been under the influence. And as I was walking down, I was in the changing room, and the gaffer called me up. I don't think I performed that weekend, and he said, "What's up?" And I was like, "There's nothing. I'm fine. You know, everything's fine." He said, "You don't look all right to me." I said, "Well, I'm fine." And it was all the deceitfulness. I'm fine. And then he went, "Well, okay." He said, "No problem." So as I left his office, I walked down to the change room, and I just done a U-turn. I just walked straight up. I didn't knock his door. I walked into Ify, and I just said, "Ify," I said, I need help." He said, "What shall I?" I said that, you know, I explained the situation, and he stood by me inch by inch. You know, he gave me every opportunity. You know, I then went on down to Sporting Chance and met the guys at Sporting Chance, and you know, I came back, and it was agreed that I needed to go into Sporting Chance for a month, and Ify Nora, you know, supported me through that. And I suppose the only way I could have paid him back, which didn't end up happening, was not getting relegated and him keeping his job to spend another year with him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't think any other manager would have done that, to be honest. I really don't. I think that was more, footballs aside, this is person to person, and if you need help, I'm here to help you. And it just shows that there are people out there like that, and he was definitely one. And you know, many other managers could have had the right to sack me, you know, but he stood by me, and I'll never forget that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we were talking before we started this, and I said the great thing about this book is it's honest, but then whilst you're drinking, you're not honest. There's that real contrast.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And it was sort of put and explained to me at the treatment centre that drinking, it's like you're playing your own character within your own soap opera, to be honest with you. You know, everything's deceitful, everything's just what you can get out of the lies, the cheating, the deceitfulness, the nastiness, the ups, the downs, the good, the bads, and then when you get sober, this is more, if anyone else is going through sort of the same experiences, that there is the option of getting yourself right, and that's why I do things like this. That's why I share the message. That's why I'm a proud recovering alcoholic. You know, I used to say I'm the proudest alcoholic that walks the streets, because there's a lot of people that's fighting and I'm really challenging with that illness. You know, with me, I hold my hands up, you know, and the book, we talked about the book was not about finance. It was about telling a story. And if anyone else, you know, is going through the same experiences, there is the other option of trying to get yourself in a better position and place. And that's why we do this. You know, it is about honesty. It is about the cutthroats and the upset, but also the positive that can come from that.
Andrew says inspirational. So there's one word for you, which I think anybody watching this will agree. Who was the best character in the dressing room at that time? James asked. Now, Lee Peacock, I don't think you kind of got on, did you, at Bristol City? But then
that was ego.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, when I was at Bristol City, he was a big character. You know, I came in, I had a decent first year, and I was a character. I was a bit like Marmite, as I said to you. You like me or you don't like me, and we sort of clashed. But then when we were at Swindon, we become really good friends, and we were a little bit older. You know, things had changed a little bit for both of us, and we sort of worked towards achieving what our goal was, and that is winning games. You know, at Bristol City, we sat next to each other but didn't speak. You know, but yeah, I had some really positive times with Lee Peacock. The biggest character in the dressing room, probably at Bristol City, Scott Murray. Swindon Town. There was a few. I would say Parkin. Parkin was a bit of a boy when I played with him. Lovely guy, good player, really good player. And Rory Fallon, had some good times with him. You know, I'll be honest. Any character that drank, I was quite happy with.
Right, fair enough. Okay. Sean says, you, sir, are a legend. I'll be reading the book. I always had the feeling that if he was a good man, and great to hear Christian confirm it. Sadly, as you said, at the end of that season that you've mentioned, where you went to the Sporting Chance Clinic, there was a change in management. Now, the Sporting Chance Clinic was a bit of a shock to you because your body weight, your body fat, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But in came two rather famous footballers, didn't they? Dennis Wise and Gus Poyet, and you kind of got on with them, didn't you?
Yeah, and if I'm totally honest, they were the first pair of managers that believed in me. Really, like Danny Wilson, great manager. But I think Danny Wilson, there was a system with Danny Wilson because he signed a striker every summer. You know, me, Lee Matthews, Lee Peacock, Tony Thorpe. You know, these strikers. It was like almost like a conveyor belt. But when I remember, I went into pre-season with Swindon after I got sober. That summer, I took my father to France, and I had a really quiet summer. Didn't do the norm as going off and partying. I really worked hard to get myself in a good shape to go back, because like I said to you at the start, if I was going to play football after coming out of treatment, it was because I deserved to and I was good enough, you know. And I got myself in a good shape, and then I went and reported to pre-season, and like you say, Dennis Wise and Gus were there, and they made me feel I was on cloud nine. You know, they really believed in my ability. You know, we had that little incentive, me and Dennis, with 20 goals, and he would pay for me to go to Dubai and stuff. And, you know, but just even the way he spoke to me, and he made me captain until Andy Williams came in, and because he said to me, he pulled me and said, look, he said, I'm going to make you captain. He said, but if I get the player that I'm looking for, he's a bit more experienced, and he'll be captain, you'll be vice captain. And I was like, I was even just thrilled that he even give me the responsibility to especially where I come from, a dark place, going into treatment not but 3-4 months earlier, you know. So to be given the armband, and I think we start the season, we won our opening 7 games until we played Paul Ince.
Yeah, yes. The signing of Paul Ince, we'll get to in a minute. But the first game at Hartlepool, of course, the Petr Brezovan game where he saved the penalties. And then I always remember he made one amazing save at Chester as well. It was an extraordinary start to the season, as you rightly say. I mean, I remember being in the away end, and we were saying we are invincible at Wrexham. And of course, Paul Ince made his debut at Wrexham, and guess what happened at Wrexham? But Paul Smith, I think, scored a fantastic free kick, if I remember right.
Yeah. And it was quite crazy because we're in the hotel the night before, and Ince's there, and you sat with Paul Ince, you sat with Dennis Wise, and you sat with Gus Poyet, and yet he played Paul Ince against Wrexham, and we lost, and I was just like, wow, you know, I looked up to Paul Ince and what a player he was, and it was just surreal. Like, he came in trying to strengthen us, and to be honest with you, that game was just a disaster. You know, it was a real disaster, but it gave us a little bit more of, you know, grit and determination to keep up there. You know, and the time, because I think Dennis left for Leeds that year. I think, was that something like the November?
Yeah, October, November time. Yeah, there was a lot of speculation, and then off they went. Yeah,
and but we kept the momentum. You know, we kept the momentum, and it was all down to I genuinely believe with Dennis and Gus about how to really make people feel good about themselves, because that's a lot of man-to-man management is about what am I going to do, and you have to do it differently for everyone to make that person believe in himself and want to perform. You know, because playing football is about performing. You know, let's be honest. And Dennis and Gus had a remarkable way of doing that. And then we went from that, to be honest with you, and even though we kept the momentum, but we then went with a manager that was old school, you know, and it was a grind between November to May because of the way that manager seeing things. You know, if you see football now,
that's Paul Sturrock, obviously.
If you see football now, and the age of some of these coaches, where they're taking the philosophy of football and just out and out encouraging people to want to perform, you know, and I just felt we took a little bit of a step back in management, but we went on to achieve promotion that year, you know, it was a decent first year after coming out of treatment, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, the promotion game was a weird one, wasn't it? Because it was Walsall.
Yes.
And actually, we haven't talked about Paul Merson, which we will in a minute. But I'm trying to get as much as possible in here because it's such an amazing story. You know, Walsall at home, last game of the season. You need a point. Walsall need a point, I think, for the championship.
Yeah.
Swindon score first. They equalise. Yeah. And then what happens? Is there kind of like a... There isn't a truth,
I just think we just both... Yes, there was somewhat football, but I just believe that both of us just wanted promotion. And I think it was... I can't remember a lot of the last 20 minutes, but I think it was literally like a pre-season walk in the park. Do you know what I mean? It was like...
I do, yeah. I was there. I watched it.
But again, you know, when you talk about mindsets, when you think to yourself that in the January I was in a treatment centre, but then within 14, 15 months, you're celebrating promotion. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into that. There's a lot of unseen work that goes into that. But it was just, you know, it was, I suppose, for the players that got relegated the year previous, it was a lot of payback to get in the club where they should be. Because let's be honest, Swindon Town, it's, you know, they should be in a championship team. They should be. You know, they've got the fan base. I haven't paid a lot of attention behind the scenes. I don't know a lot. I'm not going to have a comment on that because I don't know. But the club is a championship club. You know, it is a championship club, and how you get there and how things change. You know, it's about step by step, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And that's what needs to be done. To be honest, the club needs to put themselves where the club should be levelled at. Yeah,
sadly, more of an established League Two side in recent times rather than, sadly, as those of us who watch it. Right. So, Mr. Sturrock eventually departs.
Yeah.
And I know Paddy has sent in a couple of questions about the man who replaced him. And Maurice Malpas, I don't think he's your favourite man, is he?
No, not at all. I'll be careful how I say this.
Yeah, sure.
Just I think he was, again, I think we're talking 6, 7, 8 years later, like Frank Burrows. It was a very, very old-fashioned way of managing. Them days of running players when you have a bad result is not what is needed. The ways of communicating with players, he just, for me personally, he didn't have it, and he literally told me he didn't want me from the minute he came into the club. He didn't, whether he didn't like the person I was or the way I performed. That's his decision as a manager, But he was just so old-fashioned that I think he sank the club more than achieved anything with the club personally.
What was it then? I mean, you've mentioned 3 or 4 people that it doesn't quite click with, and I don't suppose you can put your finger on why that is, can you? Or have you thought about it a lot? Or
mate, I've never been shy to have an opinion, to be honest with you, but I just feel that some managers just didn't take to the way I performed or what I'd done, or believed in that what I'd done was the right way. Other managers, believed in me, and I was a player that, if you believe in me, I will achieve for you. You treat me like dirt, and I'll treat. My father. I go back to everything about my father. My father's always encouraged me. You treat people how you like to be treated. And with me, I can't shy away from something that if I need to say it, if I think it's right. Don't get me wrong. They're allowed to have their opinion back, but we just clashed. We clashed as people. We clashed as the way we see things. We clashed the way things should be done. Like you look at Paul Sturrock, and I go back to it. Like when we were eating under Dennis Wise, it was sort of food that was goodness. I remember Paul Sturrock ordered in like this big potato-y sort of, and he made players like heavy before games, and it's all about what's going into your body and how your body is going to be fueling the performance you're playing and you're doing the next day. And I just believe that they were old-fashioned in the way that they done things, and I think the results showed for themselves, to be honest with you.
Your knee really was a problem at that time as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it is an extraordinary life. Not only have you battled alcoholism, you've battled this awful injury. I mean, basically, you have no cartilage in your knee, do you? I mean, and it, without being too graphic and not making people wince, the bones are doing that, aren't they? This is what's happening. So you have to call time on your career, and this is at a time when your father is seriously ill. I mean, it's a stupid question, but how difficult was that week, if you like?
To be honest, so what happened was in March of that year, I had an operation, and it was quite surreal because the physio at the time, which was Dick Mackey, the type of player I was, there was a lot of talk that I didn't really want to perform and didn't really want to play, and I was quite happy, and so me and Dick went up to Harley Street to speak to a surgeon, and the surgeon said something that day that really, really made me. There was like a split decision whether I punch Dick in the face or I hug him, and basically he really challenged how I'd even been able to play the past 18 months because of the condition on my knee. And when he walked out to the office to book me in for the operation, Dick looked at me and it was that split. Like I really wanted to really hurt him, but also I needed a hug because the surgeon had pretty much told me that I got 5% chance of playing again. So we just decided to hug it out. So I had the operation in March, and I was on holiday in the summer, and I just knew I wasn't gonna get through it. I knew my career was over. So it was decided that in the October that I was gonna retire. And then my dad passed away on a week later. And it took a bit of time to digest because it was like I said to you earlier on, it was like me and my father were at the start of it together. And it was like, I remember telling my dad that my career's over. And my father was like, Chris, it's okay. He said, we spent some time together. You can still go on to. He always believed I should go into coaching, and and it was the only sad thing for me is we didn't spend any time outside of football. By the time my career had finished and I'd stopped traveling and playing for Swindon and Bristol and traveling the country, and the time when I wanted to spend my the time with my dad retiring and sort of getting used to that idea, it was just he was gone as well. So it was really difficult. It was a difficult time, and the book was the opportunity to get through all that. The decision to write the book was to try and release all the things that I'm trying to hold in and try to put into some sort of concept of where it will make me a stronger person. And for me, it was a pleasure to do. And, it was definitely something that got me through the period at the time I was at.
It was an extraordinary book. And it's called Life is a Game of Inches. Now, another name I've written down here is Al Pacino. Because that is where that title comes from. Explain why that is that title.
So when I was at Bristol City, we used to work with I don't know what you would call them now, bit of a psychologist, but motivational sort of person. And Brian, his name was, and we used to speak to him. And the one day, one game, he put this speech on. And it was the speech that we ended up playing in the playoff final with Brighton. That was the season that we listened to it. And when I was listening to it, there's things that is connected to what I feel, and especially the part where he says like he can't look at himself in the face, look at himself in the mirror and stuff like that. There was times where I had all this opportunity. I went away with Wales and, decided to go on a six-day bender instead of playing for your country and stuff. And it was just a period of time with that speech just, I still listen to that speech now. It's a remarkable speech. And I said it to James, and I said, what do you think of Life is a Game of Inches? And we just stuck with it. And that's where it came from. That speech by Al Pacino, which is, for anyone who haven't listened to it, put yourself in a little quiet room and put that on, and it's definitely an emotional sort of speech to listen to be honest with you.
Yeah, from the film Any Given Sunday, of course. Let's have a look. More comments coming in. Just joined the show. Hi, Christian. Remember having a great chat with you at Macclesfield a fair few years back with my son. You were on commentary duties. It was a pleasure that day. My son was delighted you took the time to time out to sit and chat with us. Top man. Shame about the result that day. We've lost at Macclesfield a fair few times, I think. Sadly. James says, thank you, Christian. Many, many memories of you on the county ground pitch. Inspirational. Mark says, big hugs, Christian. STFC. A sublime player for Swindon. Thank you for the great memories. Remembered fondly for your passion and skillful playmaking. You always put in a shift. You are always a red. You see, you're one of these rare players, who's played for that lot in Bristol, and you've played for us, and you're greatly respected. And I think that says a lot.
Yeah, no. Well, you look at my Cardiff to Exeter, and then Exeter to Bristol City, Cardiff City don't get on, and then I went up the road a little bit more to Swindon and Bristol, and I when people talk about careers and talk about times, and did I achieve everything I should have out my career? Probably not. But did I enjoy my career, and did I enjoy what I'd done and how I sort of got there? Absolutely. And there was a lot of people behind the scenes that made that feasible. Do you know what I mean? Greatly enjoyed my time at Swindon. I suppose with Swindon, what happened and why the connection is probably because of the sobriety as well. The transition of my alcoholism and getting sober, and the club standing by me and stuff like that. That really holds a special place in my heart, because there was every opportunity for the club to just tear up the contract and say, on you go, sort of thing, So for the club to stand by me, that was remarkable.
And you had a testimonial, of course. Gus Poyet playing a part in that. Gianfranco Zola. I mean, he's quite decent, wasn't he, Zola? Not a bad player, was he? He got a hat-trick, I
He
think, in
done
that
it.
game, didn't he?
Yeah, he done all right. He done all right. And again, you know, it just goes to show the level of sort of respect from the club, you know, offering me an opportunity to have, because I didn't have a last dance. I didn't go to my last game. I didn't see that or experience that, you know, where you think, right, okay, time to hang up now because, you know, I've done it for a bit of time. You know, I didn't have all that, and the club gave me that opportunity. So again, it just goes to show the support that club puts into their players.
This is from Craig. Hello from Blackwood, Christian, just down the road from you. Do you think that Maverick or Marmite players like yourself are exposed to greater scrutiny and comment by supporters nowadays compared to your playing days? How would you have felt about the constant glare of social media with your
To be
illness?
honest, Marmite players, to be honest with you, if you look at all the players that are the ones that take the chances, it's very difficult as a player because I played with a lot of players, and you talk about David Batty. I don't think he ever passed the ball forward. You know, so for players who put themselves on the chopping board, I support that. You know, I was that player. You know, I would take the risks, and you know, quite often, you know, I upset managers and I upset supporters. But one thing I did do is I tried to play the game the right way. So you know, you look at social media now; it's incredible the amount of damage that social media does to players. It's incredible.
Sure. Have you got a light nearby? It's just that you're getting dark and dark.
One second.
Yeah, lovely. That would be really good. Because it gets dark now at 8 o'clock at night, sadly, as winter appears. There we go. That's much better. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Stephen says Christian is one of the few players I had on the back of more than one shirt in my younger years. On his day, superb. I wanted to mention this one because there's a lovely story in the book about Paul Merson, who, of course, as we know, has been through his travails himself. And you had this kind of gentleman's agreement with him, didn't you? Yeah. When you played Walsall. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so again, it was in the sort of the damaging time that, you know, with my drinking, and I remember we turned up to Walsall, and he was playing because he was playing manager, and I was on the pitch and I wasn't feeling the best, to be honest with you. And I said, look, you know, I said, I won't track you back if you don't track me back. And he said, I'll go for that. I'll go for that. So there was a period of time where I think I was chasing him. And I just stopped on the halfway line because I thought, well, you know, I'll show him the respect. And he did the same for me. And, you know, I said to you early on in the evening, I came across Paul a couple of times in my career. When you talk about players who are willing to put it on the line and be that Marmite player, Paul Merson was that player. You know, he was an incredible player. What he could do with his right boot was incredible. And he had a wonderful career. It's good to see him in really good spirits now, and he's doing well, and he presents, and he's my favourite on Sky Sports, you know, because again, I don't know if it's part of sobriety, but his honesty, you know, his honesty Gary Neville, his honesty, you know, and that's what I think football needs a little bit. Yes, there's a time to be sort of strong and a little bit opinionated, but also we should have that sort of way of putting that across. And I think, you know, Paul Merson is that player because he went through a lot of stick in his time.
This is from Trevor. It says, my daughter was around 10, had a photo with Christian and signed her shirt. She's 22 now and a mum. So there we are. I mean, wow. Just where are you at now? What's happening with you now?
So from football, I decided to go into a bit like what my mum was, a little bit more of a community person. I've had various different roles. You know, I've done a long time with Sky Sports. I've done a long time with Show Racism the Red Card and promoting sort of anti-racist messages. And I went into a prison and started working with the under-18s in the prisons and try and sort of support that. I left the prison in January, went into a role which, to be honest with you, let's just say it wasn't what it said on the tin, if that makes it. And at the moment, I'm looking for the next sort of step where I want to go and what I want to do, and hopefully, you know, it'll be something that I'm passionate about. I'm very passionate about sort of helping and supporting the next generation, you know, people who's had sort of challenging backgrounds, and working with people and creating opportunity and supporting and helping. Really, that's what I like to do.
And you became, I think, I don't know if this is the right word, but you became quite spiritual, didn't you, during your battle with alcohol? Is that still very much a part of your life?
Absolutely. You know, it's something that has helped me sort of understand and be the person I am today. You know, do you know what I mean? And I don't always get it right. I no way say I'm perfect. I probably get it wrong more than I get it right still. But every day I wake up, I try and do what I can do to get through the day and enjoy that day, really.
Well, I have to say, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. Thank you so much. And I watched that Hartlepool goal, the one that you watched over and over and over again. It was pretty good, wasn't it? It was quite a good finish.
It wasn't bad. If I'm remembered for anything, I'll accept that.
I think you'll be remembered for a lot more than. No, that's fair enough. You'll be remembered for a lot more, I think, because, as I've said to you, it's very rare that you get a footballer who's played for one of our traditional rivals who is as much respected as you are. So I think that goes a long way, Christian. So thank you and appreciate your time tonight.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure.
And I think we should say that we've had quite a few requests to know, where is it, whether that's still available. What should people do?
To be honest, well, I told you the story earlier. I had to buy it myself online not so long ago, because my 2 young kids, and you know, I wanted them to see a few bits and pieces. But yeah, in certain shops, and I know there's a few online. So, you know, keep pushing for it, and we'll try and get it out there.
And have you, again, we talked about it before you came on, but have you thought about doing an updated version? Because this is quite a long time ago when this finishes, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, probably the last 10, 12 years, I've gone through other sort of ups and downs that, you know, maybe it'd be an opportunity to sort of put to bed, to be honest. So we don't know. Maybe it's nice to leave just that one out there.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd read it straight away. So Kevin says, Christian, top man, such honesty, all the best for your future years. And as I said to you in the interview, you've lived life where honesty wasn't a thing that you did, and now you do. It's just a contrast, and you must feel better for it as well, mustn't you?
Absolutely, you know, and part of the fellowship is if we can support and help one person, you know, then we're doing our job. And that's the same in community, isn't it? If anyone can help anyone, you know, you get 1 million people helping 1 million people. So that is part of the system, you know. So it's what I believe in, is what I stand for.
Well, we applaud that, Chris, don't we?
We certainly do. And Christian, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. It's been an absolute pleasure. We couldn't get through all the questions and the comments, but what I'll do is I will collate them all and send them over to you, because it'll be lovely for you to actually see how much you are sort of missed and everything from here. But
we have quite a few requests to put your boots on and play for us again, to be honest. So there you go. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, all these people saying how well you're looking, and you're a granddad. So yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
is any of your children thinking of football? Are they?
Actually, my kids are rugby. So 2 of my kids play rugby. Yeah. So my 10-year-old plays rugby. My 19-year-old plays rugby. So hopefully they can take me on a Lions tour. That's what I'm trying to push.
Lee says, great night, and what a player for Swindon. Always welcome here at STFC. Thank you for tonight. Thank you, Lee. Yeah, as a fellow granddad, welcome to the club. It's a joy.
It's a pleasure.
Terrible twos, though, isn't it, at the moment, Christian? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
It's the best time. All the character.
Because you can give back.
There you are.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christian. Again, it's been
no problem,
and I will send over all the questions and the comments for you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will be back next Monday. We've got Owen Doyle, so that should be another good one. See what his life is now like in Ireland. So until then, have a good week. See you all at where we go. Oh, Gillingham. Oh dear.
Oh, great. Yes.
Nice. We'll
Yeah.
see you all at Gillingham. Okay, thanks so much, everybody, and see you soon.